detected.
Ancient sands, heed my command and reclaim these relics of hatred!
Alright everybody, so today we are here to talk about part 2 of Tolerance is Extinction, the season finale of season 1 of X-Men 97. So before we get into it, I really want to reiterate the fact that I am pretty essentially new to the X-Men franchise. Like, yeah, I've, watched a cartoon, parts of the cartoon, things like that, but really I'm very green to all the storylines. So why am I telling y'all all of this? I am telling you this because the creator of the show actually told us a bunch of episodes of the original series to watch. And I think it was a mix. It was either a bunch of episodes or it was like parts from the comics. I'm not 100% sure. Point here being that he gave us a bunch of stuff to watch. I did not watch it. And so one of my friends on Twitter at the Black Ginger with 2 E's and D sent me a video explaining one of the storylines. I am so happy that happened because I never would have even guessed that what occurred in this episode was going to happen. And seeing that video explain that arc so well, baby, I was like, there's no way they're gonna do this. I just kept thinking they're not going to do this. I can't remember the name of it, but it's when they go to whatever that place is, like the space station that Magneto created, and they get into a fight with him, and Xavier tries to literally drive the man insane. I was like, there's no way they're gonna do this. And then what happens at the end? So we'll get to it. Okay, now let's get into the episode. First and foremost, Charles Xavier is back in whatever city they're, or wherever they are. I don't know what state they're in. But what I will tell you is, everybody is reading this man to filth. The episode opens with him getting up from the bed, and he's just looking around, looking at all the destruction, whatever else. Y'all, when I tell you, Cyclops don't trust this man anymore, Magneto don't trust him, and then later on what happens is I think everybody is just kind of over Professor Xavier at this point. I think everyone is just sort of over him because the time for talking has passed. And someone on Twitter, I don't remember who it was, but they made a good point that Magneto's way doesn't necessarily work either. But I think the reason that Charles is being met with all of this, I know I keep bouncing in between names. I never know what to call him. I don't know whether to call him Charles. I don't know whether to call him Xavier. I don't know. I just call him whatever I want to call him in the moment. Y'all know who I'm talking about. I also want to take a quick second to acknowledge the fact that Magneto is back in the old suit. Baby, we are not playing with this, with that little whatever suit no more. We're not playing with the little cosplay he was doing. He said, baby, I am back in the old suit. I am ready to go. I'm ready to fight. So what the X-Men are really trying to focus on right now is stopping Bastion, and they really want to convince Magneto to reverse the blackout, because essentially he really did just say let's go to war. And here's the thing people like Wolverine fully understand that he is not going to just be like, oh, you asked me nicely, okay, fine, let's do that. There's no way that that's gonna happen. But Xavier's still holding on to this hope that maybe there's a little piece of his old friend in there and they can just convince him to turn it back. And my thing is, as a viewer, too much has happened. Too much has happened to think that Magneto is just going to change his mind and he's going to restore power to the world. It can't. That's not going to happen. Now, what I was a little confused on, well, not confused, I guess curious. It's more curiosity than anything else. I'm just very curious if there are any other mutants with magnetic abilities, and like if there would be some way that they could possibly like undo what Magneto did. You know, like I'm very curious about that, because I know that powers, sometimes multiple mutants can have the same power. So that part, I'm not like, I know there has to be somebody out there that can do at least something similar. So I don't know. I was just very, very intrigued by that idea. Now here's something else that was very, very significant to me, is the fact that Charles and Scott, like, they're all kind of talking and they're like, why did you leave it to Magneto in the first place? They're kind of like, low-key Cyclops is reading him and being like, well, what did you think was going to happen when you put it in Magneto's hands? So Charles is telling him that he was trying to give him and Jean a normal life so that they could go have their baby in peace and whatever else. Here's my thing with that. Now, here's my thing as a person is, if you know me and you know me like as a Charmed fan, then you know that one of my issues with Grams is that she makes decisions for everyone else out of what she thinks is best, out of what she thinks needs to happen. And I kind of get the same vibe from him. Like, in this moment, I really feel like he was trying to say, like, I know what's best for y'all. I know what you need. I know what's going to help you. I know. And it's like, no, you don't know. You made an assumption that this was going to, you know, go the way you wanted it to, because you were hoping that Magneto was going to have some sort of loyalty to you. And he tried. He really did try. But the thing is, this is bigger than just wanting to try to change your old friend and change his mind back to what you want it to be. Like, we're past that point. And that's why when old girl said in the last episode that Magneto was right, that's why that was such a big moment. Because she realized that, like, this is serious. And it's frustrating for me as a person who, I feel like I try to be realistic, but I feel like I also have like those times where I am very altruistic, and I get where he's coming from, but I can understand how that can be draining to constantly hear like, oh, we can do fine, da 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 da. Like it. And then he kind of like low-key tells Scott, like, I know where you're going because I'm already here. And he's telling him, because Scott is like, I would have been an X-Men no matter what, and I would have always come back to help the team. And he was like, well, I know that because I'm in the same exact position. I went across the universe and look at where I'm at right now. And he holds out his hand for Scott to hold it. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he holds out his hand, and y'all, Scott walks away. And I was like, oh my God. Like, Scott is over it. Scott said, baby, don't play with me like this. You did not listen. You left us. You left the team in Magneto's hands. You didn't trust me. And now you're sitting up here trying to talk and be friends. Like my guy, come on. Be for real. It was giving very much be for real. And I also forgot to say that I think it was at the beginning of the episode, Bastion is carrying his mother, who was a Sentinel, and he was carrying her somewhere, and he was crying over her. And I really felt bad for him in that moment. I was like, well, he did turn his mama into, like, you know, a killing machine. But I mean, that's his mama. You know what I'm saying? So I felt bad for him. I felt bad for my guy. So y'all, Jubilee and Roberto, they get attacked. Like, it's a whole horde of people attacking them, and I was like, what is going on? And so then Jubilee and him and Roberto, like, they get their hands and they get their powers ready because they are fully ready. And I was like, are they gonna have to take these people out? Like, what is gonna go on? So Storm and Forge actually come in and they stop the people. And y'all, the way Jubilee looks at Storm, she's like, oh my God, my girl is back, y'all. So then they go back to the mansion, y'all. When I tell you Jean was so excited to see her girl, I can't remember if she floated Storm over there to her or if she floated herself over there to Storm. But when I tell you that lady was excited to see, she said, oh, Roro. I said, yeah, Yeah, my girl needed her friend. My girl needed her friend. She needed her friend back. And Storm is just sitting there looking like, I was literally gone for like 5 minutes. What happened? She's like, okay, so you telling me I done went down south for a little bit. Just for a little bit. I done come back, the mansion destroyed. Some of the team is missing. Some of the team is dead. Y'all couldn't have handled this for a couple of minutes without me. It was so funny. She didn't actually say that, but it's just hilarious to think, like, I feel like in her mind she was like, Jesus in heaven alive. So okay, they decide to split up, right? Half the team is gonna go to Bastion. The other half of the team is gonna go to Magneto and try to convince him to undo what has been done. I don't like split ups because I feel like when we split up, that's when things go awry, because it takes the whole team effort sometimes just to do one thing. And it's like, I feel like but somebody said something and I can't remember what they said, but I probably would have tried to get Bastion first. But I feel like somebody said something like, we're going to try to get Bastion at the same time because Magneto doesn't care if Bastion, like, he doesn't care about him. It was something like that. But I can't remember specifically what that wording was. So I would have to go back and watch it so I can give that to you. I probably should do that, but I'm not going to. There's no point in me lying to you. So then Charles drops a little bomb on us and tells us that when Bastion was a child, Cerebro actually picked him up, like, recognized him. So he just assumed that Bastion was a mutant. So he went to his house when he was little and he tried to recruit him, like, into the X-Men and tried to bring him into, the X-Mansion to be one of his students or whatever. And Storm is like, oh wow. And she looks at the portrait that's on the wall of the original X-Men and she's like, in a different reality, Bastion could have been on that wall with you. And they just like, oh well, ain't meant to be, I guess. So he also tells us that Bastion is a telepath, but he's not a telepath for humans. He's a technopath for machines. So he can, like, hear what machines, he can hear how machines work, things like that. He can communicate with them. So I was like, oh, that's a pretty, nifty ability. So y'all, here's what was funny to me. Beast and Forge were working on some machine. It was like basically to neutralize Bastion's powers, and it was to stop him from, being able to do what he needed to do. And so they were also going to try to modify it to completely take away his powers. Baby Storm hit that thunder real quick, and she hit that lightning rather, and she said, no ma'am. She said, no ma'am. She didn't even have to say the words, and she said, no ma'am. She said, we are not taking away powers. We are not permanently stripping anybody after what she just went through. Now, here's my thing with that. Love Aurora down. Love her to pieces. Love her to bits. Mama, this might not be the time for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, in the same way that I kind of feel like Charles is doing whatever he wants to do, I feel like maybe this is not the time to be, wanting to stand on our morals, because we kind of got some other things going on here. And it was in that moment that I really realized, like, Storm has not been here for pretty much anything that has happened. Like, she genuinely has not heard of this, unless somebody told her in the interim, like, what this future is gonna be where he takes over. Like, she's so far removed from everything that happens, it actually makes sense for her to want to do that, because in her mind, like, we're not doing that, we're not going that far. But then at the same time, it's also like, if she had known, like, what was coming, I feel like she probably would have been like, alright, we're gonna make this one little exception. So y'all, Rogue wakes up, right? Rogue wakes up and Nightcrawler is so excited. He's so happy to see his sister. And he goes over there to her and he's like, there were some that survived. And y'all, she thought that Remy had survived. She thought the Gambit had survived. And when she found out it was Magneto, girl, You could have bought me for $1. I was like, my poor baby. She is going through it. She missed that man so much. She misses that man so much. And she's talking to Charles, right? And he's like, I don't understand why he wanted to be buried in the swamp or the bayou or whatever. Like, he should have been buried here. And she gives a very good speech about, like, no matter how much you try to outrun yourself, that's who you are. Like, he could have tried to get out of it as much as he wanted to, but that was just a part of who he was. The people he came from, the people that he made his chosen family, all of that, that's who he was. And she is very upset with him. She is hot. Like, my girl is mad. So as they're all standing there, why did Magneto bring what I assume to be, because I think they called it, an asteroid over the mansion? And not just like a tiny like speck. Like, it was a full on, if it was in the water, it would have been an island. That's how bad it was. It was a straight up island. So this is where it gets real messy. This is where it gets very messy. So Magneto is like reading Charles down. And at one point he says my favorite line. He was like, if you hadn't abandoned us to go be with your Shi'ar bird queen, girl, whoever was in that writer's room, I am telling you, they ate that line up when they called that woman a bird queen. I said, not the bird queen, Jesus. No, how she catching strays? Now, how is this lady catching strays? She ain't even done nothing. She just living her best life. She thought she had a man that loved her and that she loved. And now she up here catching strays. And he gives this very compelling speech about, like, we can't do this anymore. And Charles is really trying to reason with him. And Magneto says that he promised his mutants, that he promised everyone that he would, protect them. And he says that he told one little boy that he would protect him. And oh God, I can't even, like, it was such a deep moment. He says, and he was talking about the little green boy whose name I can't remember, but he's saying, like, I told him to trust in me and to be calm. And then I watched his eyeballs like melt in his skull, in his tiny little skull, because of this attack and because he believed in me. Girl. I could not figure out for my life how any of them heard that and did not decide that they wanted to go with him. I couldn't figure it out. I really could not figure it out, because that was a line that would have haunted me, I think, probably for the rest of my life. That was something that I think would have really put it in perspective why he feels the way he feels. Am I saying he's right? No. I'm also saying, like, that would have made me be like, oh, yeah, they showed out. They did the most. So that's just me. So he gives them all an offer, and he says, if you want to come with me, then come with me. Rogue, who is wearing Remy's jacket, she puts it on Xavier, and she's like, I can't do this. She's like, I made a promise to help our kind when I was in Genosha, and I'm going to keep that promise. And Storm is like, don't leave your family. Like, girl, what are you doing? And Rogue says, you weren't there. You don't know what happened. And I think she said, like, none of them were there, but Nightcrawler was there. But that's neither here nor there. But no, anyway. So when she says that, she joins Magneto and she says, I'm not going to watch any more mutants die. So then, to our, like, shock and surprise, Roberto joins him. And I was like, huh? No, okay, so mind you, they have made an entire costume for Roberto. Like, he is a full-on X-Man at this point. And I was like, how did they have time to make that costume for him? But that, I mean, hey, you know what? That's neither here nor is it there. It's fine. I ain't got nothing to say about that. They made a costume for him, lickety split. Okay, fine. Anyway, so Cause he's like, my mom betrayed me. She closed the door on us. And I was like, oh my God, girl. At this point, I'm looking kind of at everybody like, there is no way that y'all still believe in this man. And then Rogue says something interesting. She's like, how many mutants are gonna have to die, Charles? Or Xavier, whatever she called him. She's like, how many more mutants are gonna have to die? Jean? And she specifically says Jean. And she's like, been there, done that. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, girl, you're not gonna throw shade at me like that. That's number one. Like, you are not gonna play in my face like that. Like, what is you calling me out for? But anyway, we kind of find out later on. So we get to the other base, right? Because apparently they had to go to their other base and whatever else. And they pull out some old costumes. Now, I had to get a little bit of clarification on this because they had Jean literally looking like she was like a majorette from 1952. I mean, genuinely, she looked like a majorette from back in the day, like she was going to be twirling up a baton. And so I had tweeted out, like, why is she wearing that? And somebody said, well, because they had, their costumes got destroyed, so they had to, go get some other ones. And I was like, go get their old ones. And I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense. But again, I say, why is my girl wearing this outfit? Why was this ever an outfit for her at any point in time? But that's neither here nor is it there. So Cyclops gives Cable his, costume. He gives him a costume, which was interesting because Cable is a very large person. Like, he's very wide shouldered, wide, whatever. I guess he's been there before because I couldn't figure out how they had a costume that just fit him. But I mean, I'm assuming that he's been there before. So anyway, that's when they make their little joke and they're like, what did you expect? Black leather? Baby, they were reading a movie. So Charles is talking to the president. I think he was talking to him telepathically. And he's just like, let us try to stop Magneto, whatever else before y'all get involved. And the president is essentially telling him, like, are you stupid? Do you know how bad this is going to look if I start working with y'all? Charles is trying. He is trying so hard. So the X-Men go out on their missions. Okay, I'm stressed out now. So Bastion is in his little lair thing, and he powers up all the Sentinels so that they can go and attack the X-Men. And I was like, okay, all right. So they're going out. Storm is like, okay, I'm finna go out here. I'm finna mess them up real quick. And Jean is like, no, there's too many of them. And they have a really sweet heart-to-heart. And Storm is basically like, we don't just believe in our gifts. We believe in each other. And then Jean says, like, make them mind your weather, sister. And then Storm is like, and weather your mind. And I was like, oh, that's such a sweet moment. And then Storm gets out there and she F's him up. Until one of them hits, Forge, and then Storm tries to stop him, and then she gets hit from behind in the back. And so she's in the water now, whatever else. So that's that. So Jean, Cable, Beast, and Morph, they make it to the ground. They fight some Sentinels and whatever else. Morph transforms into the Hulk. And I was like, okay, Hulk, come on, Kim Fields. I just need Hank McCoy to stop because he tickles me. He is like, let me lend you a hand, friend. And I was thinking he was talking to somebody. No, he was talking. He picked up one of the destroyed Sentinel's arms and hit another one with it. And I was like, you gotta be stopped. Like, these puns are tickling me at this point. My boy is cutting up with these puns. And I was like, sir, you gotta be stopped. You have got to be stopped. So in the middle of the fight, now here was my thing, right? Oh, and also there was a cute little Easter egg to the creator of the show, and his name was the name of a diner. So that was a cute nod. Listen, because in the middle of all of this though, why does Sinister take Jean Grey to the side? And I'm like, girl, we ain't got enough going on. That was all I kept thinking the whole time, was like, we don't have enough going on that now Sinister has to put his hat into the ring, and he's like taunting her, and he's telling her like, I can tell you when I made the switch, so I can tell you which memories are yours and which ones are hers. Jean says it does not matter because today Madeline is fighting with me. It's very cute, very cute, very, 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 very cute, right? Jean is low-key eating him alive. Low-key. She's eating him up. She gets knocked around a little bit. Right? So, at a certain point, Sinister lets her know, baby, I really could care less about you. I just needed you to bring what I needed. And out walks Cable, who is under Sinister's control. And he tells Jean that his mother was a world-class telekinetic, just like Jean. And he says those things don't tend to skip a generation. And his eyes glow, or his eye glows, and then he glows. And some trees, like the bark comes off of some of the trees. And then he throws like this telekinetic blast at Jean, and Jean is holding it off as best she can, but then she like calls to Scott, who is still with Magneto now, and we're gonna double back to them, but I wanted to finish up her little part. So she calls to Scott, she brings him there telekinetically so he can see what happened, and she sees him and she says, I love you, and then seemingly gets eviscerated. Gagged. Now we got a storm in the water. Jean done got blown away by a telekinetic blast. It's too much. It's too much. Like literally I was sitting there just thinking to myself, like, this is too much. I can't do this. Like, I was stressed. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I was absolutely stressed. So we get to the asteroid, right? Magneto is basically like, here you go. Like, I knew y'all was coming. Like, you ain't doing nothing that I didn't think was gonna happen. Y'all, Magneto, Charles is just up here just doing his thing, talking. And Magneto says, I'm going to tell you 2 words that I've wanted to tell you for years. Shut up. And then he puts a piece of metal over Xavier's mouth. Y'all, I gagged. I was so tickled by that. I said, you know what? That man is sick of that man. He is tired of him. He is absolutely tired of that man. And he wants him to hush. And next time that somebody gets on my nerves, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, I am going to tell you 2 words that I have wanted to tell you for so long. Shut up. Baby. And I was thinking, like, is he finna cuss or something? He just said, shut up. He just said, shut up. He was like, hush. I'm telling you, whoever is writing for Magneto in this season, bravo. Because the shade that man throws, the reads that he doles out, that man is sassy and I live for it. So, here's the thing about it, is Wolverine goes to attack, right? Rogue jumps on him and is like, oh no, sugar. And I was like, oh. But then the gag of the century is, what's her name? Jubilee. She goes to throw some of her little firecrackers. Y'all, Roberto hits her with his powers. And then he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, or whatever. And my girl is angry because she's already hurt that he done left her. Like, she's already upset because she feels like he was basically saying, like, she wasn't enough for him to be happy there. And I was just like, so then she like starts attacking him and he's like, girl, I said I was sorry. Y'all, he said, I said I was sorry. She just keeps on going on. So at this point, now we just throwing firecrackers and fire at each other. I was gag a tundra at that. So mind you that all this is happening, like, I mean, the thing with Scott and Jean is happening, like, during this time, right? So Charles is telling Scott telepathically that he needs to help him get Magneto's helmet so that he can manipulate Magneto, basically to make him, save Earth or whatever. So through, some force, we do get the helmet off. Charles tries to drive the man crazy, but I'm gonna come back to that because I do want to mention something else. Back on the island, I forgot to mention to y'all that Morph transformed into Sinister. This was one of my favorite moments of this episode, just because of the shade of it all. Morph turned into Sinister to try to trick Bastion, and he had the necklace with him that they're gonna use to like take his powers. And he was like, "The X-Men, Charles's little brats are here, so we need to retreat." Bastion immediately clocks that and is like, Sinister is too selfish of a person, essentially, to do something like this, to look out for somebody else. So then Beast and Morph get their tails whipped by the Sentinels. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, so now Bastion has this thing that can take away powers. Babe, we are not really in a good situation right now, especially not with someone who has technopathy, apparently. Like, we're in a good situation. So y'all, let's get back to Charles and them. So Charles thinks he's doing something because he telekinetically messes with Magneto's mind and his body, right? He is all up in this man's mind. I'm all up in your mind. Oop, I don't know if I can sing that. The lady might sue me. My point here is, Charles messing with this man's mind, right? He lets him down. Magneto falls to the ground. Very limp, very Family Guy. Peter just fell, whatever. Like, it was given very that. It was given very a Family Guy character just fell down the stairs. Y'all. So, Xavier gets up. And he like has everybody, like he just lets out a big pulse and he just like throws everybody to the side. Like everyone is trapped on the wall, like everybody, even the people that are there for him, they are trapped on the wall with like metal, keeping them held on to the wall. So then he I think he put the helmet on Xavier's head and he was torturing him with it. Yeah. So at this point, Wolverine stabs him through the chest, or really his body, his torso, I don't know. He stabs him through his body with his claws, right? Magneto uses his powers to remove the claws from his body and retract them into, Wolverine. And at this point, he gets so enraged that he removes all of the adamantium out of Wolverine's body. Girl. If I had known about that ahead of time, I promise you, the gag that I would have... There's no way. Everybody was in shock. Everybody was in shock. I don't even think they played music at the end. You know how usually when they do the little click around thing to show everybody's powers at the end, I don't even think they played music, or if they did, it was very solemn. I am telling you that this episode was so good. This episode was so good. And here's the thing. I know I talked a lot about how Charles does a lot of talking. I think if you've ever seen Steven Universe, that's an issue that I have with Steven Universe, is I feel like he does a lot of talking, and I feel like he does a lot of trying to convince everybody that things are going to be okay. And all we really have to do is just hug it out and we'll be okay. We'll be all right. And that approach is fine, I think, up to a certain point, but you have to realize when that's no longer an option. You know what I mean? Like, Magneto is on a giant asteroid and he has just completely eviscerated all of the technology, like electricity, all of that. People have died because there were people in hospitals, there were people on planes, there were Magneto has killed people. It's not just that he turned off the lights in the city and so now nobody in the city can get to light. get lights. He turned off the lights in the world. And not just the lights, electricity. Everything that was metal related, anything. There's only some things that survived. Like Bastion stuff can, operate because, of him. And then Forge's leg or something, I think it runs on like a different atmosphere. And then like something else runs on like alien technology. So it's good. Like there's so many different things that Magneto affected. And it's like Charles wants this sweet middle ground of still being able to talk to Magneto and change his mind while fixing the problem. And we're past that. Now, on the other hand, like the person on Twitter told me, Magneto is just as to blame because what he's doing is not working either. And that's another huge chunk of the problem. The way he approaches it is much more vicious compared to what Charles is trying to do. So they're on two different ends of the spectrum, and those ideals are just not, they're not ever going to mesh. But I think now it's such a time where like Magneto is trying to, in his mind, save mutants. He's trying to save mutant kind, and Charles just still wants everyone to get along. And I think what's significant is that like Charles and Cyclops, they don't butt heads necessarily fully, but there are times where you can tell that Scott is still trying to lead the team, and he'll kind of look at Xavier like, now what? You know what I mean? And I think part of that is Charles' fault. I think it's his fault because he left them, and I'm not gonna say they did a great job of sustaining themselves because we got into some trouble, but they were sustaining themselves. And regardless of like how things went, I think it gave them that moment to say like, we can do this without him. And I don't know. I think something else, and now here's a very small thing that this is a headcanon. This has nothing to do with anything that anyone said in the show. I think Cyclops isn't saying it out loud because he does still want to save everybody. He does want to save the world. I genuinely think for some reason that like he sees that what Xavier is saying is not right. Not that it's not right. That's not the phrase I'm looking for. I think he sees the flaw in it. And I think that's the problem that he's having with taking direction from him now, is not necessarily like, oh, I hate you. I think it's like they're at this point where he sees anyway that maybe Magneto does have a point, but he's not saying that. That's just something I picked up kind of, was like, and I think it comes from Charles making that decision for him and trying to say like, oh, I put him in charge so that you wouldn't have to worry about it. I think that was kind of what like made that thought come into his head. But again, no one said that thought came into his head. This is literally just me saying that. So there's that. And then I just feel so bad for Rogue. I really do. Because Rogue is going through it. And I do think that they're doing a good job of showing trauma, because the thing is, and this is no shade, but people kind of throw the word trauma around a lot now. And I think that's good and bad, because I kind of think that people take advantage of that word because they're like, oh, I'm traumatized, or this was trauma, or whatever else. And so they kind of use that to maybe gaslight, or they use that to manipulate, or they use it to whatever. So it's a good and bad thing that we're bringing awareness to trauma. But I love the way that this handles that. Rogue is going through it. Like, and it's not something that gets solved in a couple of episodes, like it's not like she's like, oh, I know that he wouldn't have wanted me to do this. Like, no, that has not come out of her mouth. Whether he wanted her to do it or not, baby, she's doing it. And that's the big thing about it, is regardless of anything else, this is the choice that she's making. It's the same way that she went on the rampage, essentially. She's hurt. And it's deeper than just It's deeper than just him dying. It's deeper than just her feeling like she betrayed him, right before he died. She's literally seen her kind wiped out. Like, imagine you go to heaven for a minute. Like Buffy is a good choice. Imagine you go to heaven and then you get ripped out of it. That's essentially what happened to Rogue, except instead of her getting ripped out of heaven, she got ripped out and then a bunch of people died, including somebody that she loved. Like, her and Kurt are traumatized. Now, here's the thing about that. Kurt, I want to say someone said that he lived on the island. I want to say he lived on the island, but even if he didn't, he had that same attachment, but he didn't turn into that. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't turn into this guilt-ridden person that Rogue is. Now, I don't know much about his backstory, but I genuinely feel like Rogue is going through this right now because of a mix of hurt, because of a mix of grief, a mix of like confusion of look at what they've done to us, look at what they allowed us to do. I just love the complexity of her storyline, and it's one of those things that has really endeared me to that character and to this story, that they don't just let her figure out and be like, everything's fine now. Like, no, she woke up, she's still upset, and then she goes to join Magneto, and it just, oh girl, I don't know, I love it. I love that. I absolutely love that. The last thing that I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna get on up out of here and leave y'all alone for the day, is I want to know how we're finna fight Bastion. I really am very curious. Like, besides seeing if Storm and Jean have survived, I'm very curious to see how they're about to go about fighting Bastion, because he is not your regular schmegula run-of-the-mill villain. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm very excited by this story. I'm very excited to see how the story ends. So, with that being said, I will see y'all here next week for the conclusion of season 1 of X-Men 97. As always, I would like to thank our lovely patrons on Patreon, as well as our supporters on the TikTok Live. Thank you so much for supporting me. All of this is made possible by a viewer like you. If you would like to support me on Patreon, please go to the Power of G on there. And we have a $3 tier that gives you access to our GroupMe group chat, as well as our weekly watch parties. And you get a host of other features. So, I'll see you there. You can find me anywhere on social media at theycallmemr.g. You can find me on TikTok at theycallmemr_g. You can find me on Instagram at theycallmemr.g. You can also find me at Mr.G Reviews, and you can find me at Power of G Community 2024 on Instagram. So you can find me there. You can hit me up. You can talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. And I guess I'll see y'all later. Bye.